coming and talking with us all, and I'm assuming you maybe have some stuff you want to talk to us about, and then
oh yeah.
I'm assuming you guys probably have some questions that you might be interested in asking.
And I got some questions for you too. It's not a free ride.
So, goes both ways. All right.
Okay. Oh, this is crazy. I've been in a room with this many good-looking women for a while. Don't take the compliment. It doesn't seem like for them, at least, like that's part of the middle of job qualifications. Yeah. Anyway, just a few things I'll point out. I'm not gonna BS or sugarcoat anything. What you'll get is completely open and honest, because my hope is that you'll get out this advice or feedback or whatever, and it's professionals. It's nothing less than the truth. And two, I'm a little nervous, I'll admit that, because if I struggle with my sentences or I come close to yours, bear with me, because I'm only human, and even being at peace with this is still emotionally heavy stuff to talk about. So, it's hard to think about where to begin, but I'd like all of you to do this. Picture the following. Picture a very young boy, age 4.5, knowing what he wanted to say and do, but with great difficulty in communicating and forming relationships with other people, and in using language and abstract concepts. A boy who exhibited various social and behavioral problems, to such an extent that it all culminated with a phone call from his preschool teacher to his parents explaining his problem. What they found out following a doctor's diagnosis was that their son was autistic with an IQ of 83. Thanks to a referral from a friend of theirs, they were able to place him in a program that would teach him the functional skills necessary to replace previously inadequate behavior, thereby allowing him to learn and live an independent and productive life. And so this boy began applied behavioral analysis therapy at age 4.5 with tantrums, no friends, self-stimulatory behavior, and no descriptive language beyond one-word labels and demands. What it took amidst the frustration of enduring hours upon hours of therapy and being forced to try what he believed himself to be incapable of saying or doing was a realization that this therapy was helping him, that he needed to keep trying, that he needed to succeed. Eventually, the boy recovered from autism at the age of 10. Overcoming autism was as if this boy's life had begun again, for he was now more, if not entirely, capable of communicating and forming relationships with other people, given the accomplishments that resulted from his hard work. Now picture this. Picture a 14-year-old boy several years later. Quiet, well-behaved on the outside, but on the inside, boiling and dying for a life to burst open with any sort of stimulation. And music was what was to burst it wide open. But not just any music. This is more than just music. It was a powerful, loud, heavy sound that moved his soul. He was drawn to it like a metal to magnet, or more like a shy boy to his own loud voice. And amidst all the bullying and teasing he endured in school, those monstrous riffs lived inside him and spoke the feelings that he could never put into words, sending chills of inspiration through him from those gloomy lyrics and outlaw chords and all. They helped to crack the shell he was stuck in, allowing him to let out his anger and frustration in a positive way. Also, scaring his mom and sister was an extra bonus. All right. So, to get into some more, the first time my family noticed that I was showing signs of being different from other kids was when I was 2. And I didn't start speaking before that age, and learning to do so was difficult. And at 3, I couldn't play with friends or classmates as others around me were doing, and I had difficulty transitioning between environments. I was so used to doing certain things each day that I could not take any changes whatsoever. I also showed signs of self-stimulatory behavior, constantly looking at objects such as traffic lights or the signs of places. My parents noticed this from the start, but since autism was still fairly uncommon at the time, and my family did not really know much about the disorder and the symptoms, it was not until I turned 4 that it became clearly evident to them that something was wrong with me. After a period in time in which I was having lots of behavioral problems and social problems at school, it all culminated with a phone call from my preschool teacher to my parents. She explained to them that I was not functioning in class, meaning that while all the other kids were socializing, I myself was lying on the floor, curled up in a ball. In response to this, my parents took me to a doctor for a diagnosis, where it was revealed, as they said, that I was autistic with an IQ of 83. The doctor told my parents that chances were I would have to be put in a special ed program at a public school. Yet, knowing the bad reputations of those programs, my parents began looking into other alternatives. In the beginning, it was difficult for them to find additional help for me, as autism was still a relatively rare disorder. Eventually, through a referral, my parents came across an organization called the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. And so I don't really have to go into the whole idea, but once they found out about this program, they became convinced that they had the most well thought out solutions to my problems. And like I said, I entered age 4.5, complete tantrums, no friends, all the self-stimulatory behavior, no descriptive language, and I endured weekly one-to-one therapy of 25 to 40 hours at different times, which included a half day in regular preschool and lots of hours of work after school and on weekends. For a long time, I had other people structure my time for me, and I was constantly being redirected and told that my way of doing things was wrong. From what I was told, my therapy began with a diagnosis of my condition, followed by assessments such as standardized tests measuring my IQ, language ability, and executive functioning, as well as skills assessments in order to figure out my exact problems. Then a specific program was generated for me so I would be taught only the skills that I lacked, rather than going by the book. Once I started learning these basic skills, my challenging behaviors began to decrease. It wasn't easy in the beginning, however, because not only did I have to endure those hours of therapy, but it was difficult for me to be forced to try what I believed myself incapable of saying or doing, because making mistakes in the process would leave me frustrated. I remember one time when I had to count a row of 6 blocks in order, during which I constantly messed up, leaving me confused and upset. Yet, over time, I improved, and as I did so, I realized that this therapy was helping me make the decision to keep trying, but with more determination to succeed. And eventually, I recovered from that. I will say, though, that it didn't end there. In the beginning, because I spent most of my first year and a half after my diagnosis in an environment in which there were other kids suffering the same similar disorders as me, I was not aware of the daily discrimination that people with mental and physical disabilities and handicaps face. With all of us under the supervision of adults who understood our difficulties in socially interacting and communicating, I did not see myself as being any different from anybody else. Only when I began kindergarten did my sense of security change significantly. And I come from Culver City, and I only entered kindergarten while still battling autism, but Culver City's mostly a small school district in which students go from kindergarten through 12th grade with mostly the same people. This was how I initially came across and was remembered by most of the students. Therefore, even after I significantly recovered from the disorder, I was still treated as if I didn't matter at all, that I was worth nothing to these people. Having been taught by my family to be open to and respectful of others regardless of their differences, I was frustrated and confused by why I was being treated as nothing more than my mental condition, as I had never meant any wrong towards those who treated me this way. Constantly, I struggled with being stereotyped by many of my peers as someone who was helpless, inferior, unintelligent, and not capable of fully developing his abilities. With my difficulties in communicating my thoughts and feelings, forming relationships with other people, and in using language and abstract concepts, I had a hard time understanding the meanings behind others' actions and words. Because my impaired social interaction and communication made it difficult for me to examine and observe my own mental and emotional processes, I also had difficulty distinguishing between my own perspective of myself and others' perspectives of me. As I could not process my thoughts, I easily succumbed to the belief that my being autistic was my fault, as it seemed that those who discriminated against me felt that my disability was more of a failing than a simple consequence of human diversity. I felt this way for a long time, and held grudges against those who made me feel it. How the other students treated me through most of my school years made it difficult for me to fit in. As much as I tried to be respectful towards others, I was hesitant to establish friendships even with students who did not discriminate. As I attended kindergarten through 12th grade with mostly the same people, my fear was that those who taunted me would influence the good people to act the same way towards me. Therefore, I felt alone most of the time, struggled to connect with other people. Eventually, however, I came to a point where I wanted to better understand why it was that I faced these difficulties, and I began undergoing regular therapy with a psychologist. Through this therapy, I came to realize that because autism was a mental condition that developed within me, and was not something that I chose to be, as it was something that I had no control over, I finally understood that I should not be ashamed about something that wasn't my fault. Through this, I was able to realize that the main reason people can be cruel is because they are ignorant and have their own insecurities. While the harassment and bullying I endured made me desperate not to do the same, I couldn't help but feel sorry for these people, as they did not know any better and were not confident or sure about themselves. Therefore, I was able to bring myself to forgive them. students, I came to see how they struggled to interact with others in the right way due to the anxiety and uncertainness they felt. Does this give you a good idea?
A lot of information.
Yeah.
Thank you for being so candid with us too. I can imagine thinking back on your own, experience with ABA and as well as just your experiences in school, and it sounds like some of the discrimination that you felt going to school, that must bring back emotion too, and probably not the easiest thing to talk about, so we really appreciate your honesty about it.
Yeah, you got me right. I got that right. I mean, you know about that one new movie coming out called Bully?
Yeah.
Yeah, just all the controversy got over its R rating, and just watching the trailer, it just brought back a lot of stuff for me, and I want to see that rating lowered because I think for too long schools have been ignoring the emotional needs of their students. And basically, the very people whom this film is about is the ones the MPAA is blocking access to. And this is definitely something I feel that could change their lives. And I don't want to see anyone get bullied anymore.
And even with that, I mean, there's a lot more, it seems like a lot more press and notoriety or attention about bullying and teasing than there even would have been, when you were going through elementary, middle, and high school, so. Do you mind if we let people just kind of ask you questions?
Sure.
I don't know if anybody has any specific questions. I know I have some. No, so I'll ask questions. I'm just wondering if you could tell us about some of your memories with your therapist, or like at the time, and I would assume, I think we might have talked about this a little bit when we had lunch at Thanksgiving time, that over time maybe your opinions have changed. Like, what did you think when you were younger about your therapy and your therapist? What was, versus as you get older, looking back on it, kind of re-examining it, later on down the road?
It was mixed. Sometimes it was good, sometimes it was bad. Sometimes I liked it, sometimes I absolutely hated it. I mean, God. I recall trying to defy it several times, even one time going so far as running away. Actually, I think it was 7 or 8. Even that I was a rebel with the cause. And what else? Particularly, I remember some therapists being very strict. And I gotta tell you, I can't stress enough how important it is to consider how your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions can impact the kids you work with, when they have the tendency to take things quite literally and have trouble with this whole concept of perspective taking, being able to process perspectives of other people. And there were just some that were very hard on me. And so it just left me feeling hurt for a long time because of as I said, my tendency to take things quite literally then. And not that I was thinking those words at the time, but I just was frustrated and upset as to what I could have done to have fucked up. That was definitely the feeling. And yeah, I remember I ran into one such therapist unexpectedly, and when I saw her, I tried to talk to her, but it was so difficult, and I came pretty close to tears.
This is just like, you mean later on in life, like
later on,
recently?
Because, God, it just brought back memories, and I just had to leave the room for a second because it was tough. But I mean, I know now that all they ever meant was well. I guess they just didn't, I think they just had a bit of a hard time understanding where I'm coming from, how their actions impacted me then. I was still sensitive, but especially then extremely sensitive to what other people said and did. What else? It's difficult to say other than that, if I ever see anything visual, be it footage, it's tough to watch. There's actually a documentary produced at C.A.R.D called Recovered, featuring 4 families, mine included, that were able to successfully overcome the disorder. And even now, I cannot watch that documentary with a straight face. Because, remember how I said I was talking about, that time I struggled counting 6 blocks? There was footage of that in there, and anytime I see that, it just gets to me. It really does. Because it's so vivid, man. I mean, anything visual really does that for me. Be it footage, therapist faces, so on.